are living in a computer-programmed reality, and the only clue we have to it is when some variable is changed and some alteration in our reality occurs. We would have the overwhelming impression that we were reliving the present, déjà vu, perhaps in precisely the same way, hearing the same words, saying the same words. I submit that these impressions are valid and significant, and I will even say this: such an impression is a clue that at some past time point a variable was changed, reprogrammed as it were, and that because of this an alternative world branched off.
Greetings and welcome to another edition of Free Association Radio. My name is Robert Phoenix. You're listening to the 11th House on a Sunday night, broadcasting to you live from South Central Texas, also known as Austin. We're here to talk about astrology, the planets, the stars, the within, the without, how they move us, how we move them, and the crazy, wild, amazing, bizarre, surreal universe we're living in currently. We do this every Sunday night, and the path, the flight path here is figuring out where the planets are, what they're doing, trying to understand their influence in our lives on an individual level and a collective level, right? Try to get the 40,000-foot view. We're going to go through, we're going to look at where the planets are this week, any sudden or subtle changes, and they're coming very quickly. And as a result of that, gain some sort of topographical understanding about the world around us, the inner and the outer landscape. And we were living, I say this again and again and again, but we were living in phenomenal times. These are not easy times. These are challenging. These are testing. These are tribulatory times in many ways. But this is where we are now. It's where we are on the planet. And let me pull my mic closer. This is not like the late 90s, pre-9/11, where we were high on quantum realities and potentialities, although they're there still, don't get me wrong. And I've been talking about making a pivot, having the pivot moment for our lives, our work, the collective. But those were very different times. Very different. And how we approached our spiritual and philosophical centers in our lives is very decidedly different. Different nomenclature, different zeitgeist altogether. We were not dealing with the post-historical precedent of 9/11, which changed everything. And we're coming up again to that moment in time where transiting Saturn will be opposite where Saturn was in the chart for 9/11, 2001. So, we're right at that stage, which is the 14 years, halfway around the chart. And this is the last pass that we'll have with Saturn opposing Saturn. And I'll tell you when that is. We get real clear about that real soon here. Hold on a second. Let me get into the ephemeris. How is everybody, by the way? We've had a very peculiar week. We had a massive earthquake in Italy. We've had massive fires in Southern California. We've had massive torrential downpours in the southeastern part of the United States. So if you combine them, we've had these events that are biblical. I mean, these are the weather events that are that could be put out, that could be marketed as a revelation type weather script, because they're huge. I mean, the amount of people that have died in Italy are significant. I think approaching 300 people. The amount of territory and acreage that has been claimed by fire in California is off the charts. The water and the disaster of Louisiana is unprecedented. And we're not done. We are not done. I was out on Friday night and I saw an atmospheric occurrence that was pretty mind-blowing. I was at a high school football game, and off in the distance, not too far off in the distance, by the way, there was an enormous cloud. It almost looked like the cloud was sheathing a mothership. And there were flashes of lightning. There was something going on with this cloud that almost bordered the supernatural. It was really out there. But it wasn't anything I had really seen before. It was some ways, really phenomenal and mysterious, and one of those things that you encounter in nature every now and then that makes your jaw kind of go, wow, this is way bigger than the rest of us. But it was so unusual that it almost felt like that it was synthetic or artificial because of the unusual nature of it. Now, every now and then nature will give us that, but we've got about a week and a half here, 2 weeks maybe, coming up on 9/11 again. And what I was listening to on the news, on the weather side of things, is that we're going to have really intense weather. I mean, we've got a storm now. It's a big, massive cell that's accumulating in the Gulf of Mexico, hanging out there, getting bigger, getting bigger, getting bigger. Now, we have not had a significant hurricane season for quite a while. Does anybody know why? I'll tell you why. It's because the loop current has been broken. The loop current has been broken. So we have the tropical currents, the Gulf Stream, and the jet stream. Right. The tropical is the Gulf Stream, and the non-tropical from Alaska is the jet stream. So we have the northern, we have the southern. Apparently, and this has been going on for a while now, is that the Gulf Stream has been broken. That the weather has fundamentally changed so much, and that we've been so invasive in manipulating the weather that it just doesn't work anymore. So part of the reason why the chemtrailing goes on, part of the reason why we have this, the geothermal, or sorry, not the geothermal, but the aerosol component of what's going on is because they need to do this now. The weather is so broken that they literally have to create weather fronts in order to move the currents along. Now, this has to do with a number of factors. This has to do with the fact that ever since Fukushima went down, the weather got worse. There are reports that we are all living under a very toxic, poisonous, radioactive sky with radioactive oxygen. If you want to get any kind of information about Fukushima, you go to rents.com. And then we go into the Gulf, go to the Gulf of Mexico. And this was just pre-Fukushima. We're dealing with a disaster of the Gulf of Mexico and going in and using millions and millions of gallons of Corexit. And I've talked to people from New Orleans. I've talked to people that lived on the Gulf. And they've told me horror stories about it. Absolute horror stories. So what happened wasn't just that people got sick. What happened wasn't just that the marine life got infected at a deep level. What happened is that they completely and utterly destroyed the loop current that goes from, well, they didn't destroy, but they didn't destroy it. No, they impacted the loop current that goes from the Gulf of Mexico and basically loops around the Caribbean and up into the North Atlantic. And you have the Gulf Stream that's broken. And so we have these events that have influenced our weather in a huge way. And then, of course, we have the geoengineering and chemtrails and HARP and moving these things along. And it's almost like now we almost have to create the weather in order for us to experience the type of semi-regular movement that we have. But we haven't had a hurricane or hurricane season in years. It's because the Gulf Stream is broken. It doesn't accumulate and does what it needs to do on the semi-annual basis, or a yearly basis, rather. So now we've got this massive cell that's building up in the Gulf of Mexico, and I think what they're in the process of doing is creating a superstorm. And we got a superstorm coming our way, and this is a storm that would wreak havoc across maybe 3, 4, 5 states. Really bring the water levels of the Mississippi River up. So I feel like this is, it's on its way. Well, why do I think that? Well, because we're entering into the time of Virgo. In fact, we're in Virgo now, but we're entering into Mercury Retrograde, which is in Virgo. That'll be on the 31st, the 31st. And not only are we dealing with the Mercury Retrograde on the 31st, but when we get into Virgo, just like when we get into any other sign, we deal with the opposite sign. So through Virgo, we experience an invocation of Pisces. And what do we have in Pisces? We've got Neptune in Pisces. We've got the South Node in Pisces. We have Chiron in Pisces. Those are all in some ways certain vulnerable places for Pisces to emerge. Now, Neptune is the ruler of Pisces. So it's vulnerable to the extent that when we experience the polarity of Pisces, and there is polarity inside Pisces, it's extreme. It's going to be one way or the other, but it will be extreme, and it will be powerful, and people will have to deal with the overabundance of Pisces through Neptune. Chiron is the wound of Pisces, and the South Node is the Achilles of the nodal ascent and descent when it comes to the true node and the South Node. Pisces is that really vulnerable backside of the nodal trip that's going on right now. So we have 3 major planets. They've been there for a while, but when we get into Virgo, we begin the activation of the polarization. So the activation of the other side of Virgo occurs, which means that when we get into a period where we have the potential for real big weather, which is now here at the end of summer, beginning of fall, and we're in the invocation of the opposition. Boy, this has huge potential. Now, I was talking with another person, dear friend, the other day, and we were talking about false flags. False flags. And in fact, we were talking about how, and I talked about this on Friday's show as well, that we are probably getting close to false flag season, which again is another manifestation of Neptune and Pisces squaring Saturn in Sagittarius, and and we're in that place now where we're getting the T square with Sagittarius and Neptune, Saturn, Sagittarius, Neptune, and Pisces, and some of these Virgo planets, Sun and Virgo specifically. So we're in that mutable T square range. And when we approach the whole topic of the false flag or the operation, the Gladio style operation, it's been with this Piscean backdrop, squaring Saturn. We are having a hard time getting to and cutting through the fog of illusion and getting to some kind of truth. And when we begin to sort of disseminate this stuff and get into it, it's almost like it's a joke at times too, because we were looking at the father of Omar Mateen standing at Hillary Clinton's press conference and Q&A in Florida. He was standing there right behind her. Mind blowing. So even when we have a sense of, well, maybe this is what's going on or this is what's going on, we start to dissect, when the club was open, the Pulse nightclub, and how many people were actually there, and all the other stuff. The script is flipped, and now we're dealing with something completely absurd and surreal. It's a very Piscean kind of reality with Omar Mateen's father hanging out at her press conference. So another interesting component to this, and I wanted to bring this up since we're on this topic of truth and Pisces and reality. There was a guy who had been arrested. He wasn't even arrested. I think he turned himself in. His name was James Wesley Howell. Now, if you want to read a pretty good article about this, go on over to Henry Mackow's site. I don't always agree with Henry. We don't see eye to eye. He won't be on my show, and he won't publish my astrological stuff because he doesn't believe in it. But James Wesley Howell was arrested right around the same time that Omar Mateen did his thing. It was, the same night. And he was, excuse me, he asked the Santa Monica police for protection. Okay, let's get our facts straight. This was on June 12th. So remember, June 12th, that was right after 6/11, which is the inversion of 9/11, if 6 was a 9, Jimi Hendrix. And he asked the Santa Monica police for protection. And this is what he said. He said that he was supposed to bomb the gay pride parade, but had backed out when he learned that Omar Mateen had been killed in Orlando. He said he had trained with Mateen at a CIA camp in Virginia. Police found the following in his possession: items no freelance or ISIS terrorist to be able to assemble. He had 25 pounds of shock shot, an explosive used for blowing up targets by high-velocity bullets, mostly likely to cause a crowd widespread panic, and a possible escape by assailants in smoke and mass confusion. The two components needed to make the shock shot explosive had been mixed. Hal had an Anderson Manufacturing AM 115 223 high-velocity round caliber rifle. The rifle had a round in its chamber, and additional rounds in the 30-round magazine attached to it. Another 30-round magazine was taped to the rifle. He had a 30-06 bolt-action rifle with a round in its chamber and a high-velocity 22 caliber Ruger semi-automatic pistol. He had a mass-murdering commandos assassin arsenal. This is from another website called Mind Controlled Black Assassins. I've talked about this website before. Pretty interesting. In Search of Black Assassins. Really fascinating stuff. Now, says here the FBI, this is what Henry said, swept in and took charge of Hal. So he goes to the Santa Monica police, says, I want to be protected. The FBI comes in and they grab him. Since then, there's not been one word about his case in the media, proof that he was telling the truth. This is what Henry says. Most disturbing is that both the mass media and alternative media won't touch the story. It proves that the American people are complicit in the charade that is the war on terror. They are accomplices at best, victims of Stockholm Syndrome at worst. Henry's got a very interesting point here that people are unwitting accomplices to this fomented war on terror. Now, because they're bringing in thousands of disaffected, angry, pissed off people who've had their lives bombed, now we got a problem. Now there could possibly very well be, terrorism inside the United States, as we've seen it in Europe. But before then, we've had to have the patsy plot. Somebody gets drawn into something by the FBI, and next thing you know, they're thinking they're going to have a shot across the bow for the people revolution, and it's really just a form of entrapment. But now we've got some other things happening now. Now we've got some live bullets out there. This guy apparently was supposed to play his role in this East Coast, West Coast bifurcation of reality, which would have been a very Gemini experience, right? On the West Coast, you would have had one event. On the East Coast, you would have another event. Over here, you have a disgruntled Caucasian American male. Over here in Orlando, you've got the disgruntled Muslim. And of course, their strange narrative that they're actually really uncomfortable with their closet homosexuality. So the reason I'm bringing this up is because this is what we're talking about with Neptune and Pisces, squaring Saturn in Sagittarius. It's the memory hole. Think of Neptune and Pisces as a giant whirlpool in the ocean, just sucking down event after event after event. Like, what happened to the guy that went nuts down in Columbia, South Carolina? What happened to him? Where's his trial? We've just moved on from one event to the next every 2 to 3 weeks, consumed by the whirlpool, the swirling whirlpool of Neptune's influences inside the collective. Very interesting piece on this cat. Henry goes on to say, it is mind-boggling that no one in the mainstream media has followed up on this case. It is heart-sickening and mind-boggling that no one in the alternative has followed up. Not even let's get off the EBS, let's get off the BS and Gio Griffin, who first broke the story. I have written 4 to 5 alternative media types and also didn't get a reply. The alt media is having a really difficult time right now, real growing pains, because again, let's talk about how this looks from an astrological perspective. We're dealing with Saturn in Sagittarius. Sagittarius wants to be free. Sagittarius wants to be autonomous. It wants to be expansive. It wants to be open. It wants freedom of expression. That's what Sagittarius wants. Saturn in Sagittarius wants to put limits on this. It wants to put limits on how we communicate. It wants to put limits on what we share. It wants to put limits around the language of truth. Now, conversely, and this is where it gets interesting, when we look at something like immigration, right, or the migrant crisis, what are we dealing with? We're dealing with Saturn in Sagittarius, because Sagittarius represents other countries and people from other countries. Saturn is the Capricornian mandate that we're going to get this. The square to Neptune is how it's obfuscated, and people are being deluded by some kind of Judeo-Christian need for compassion and any lingering pieces of white guilt. And this is what it gets played upon. So again, it's that Saturn-Neptune square. So it's happening on a number of different levels. On the one hand, we're dealing with, again, the limitations of being able to be authentic, autonomous, freedom to express oneself. Saturn closing in on that. We've already heard that there are rumors coming out of Hillary Clinton's camp that, we need to shut down Breitbart. We need to shut down Astrological. We need to shut down these websites that are leading us into a political dark age of fear, suspicion, and a nasty form of nationalism. This is all for a psychological effect, obviously. What is funny and what I think is really ironic, and again, because we're dealing with some Sagittarius and Gemini themes here, is that the right has become the alternative. The status quo is no longer the right. It is not. The status quo is the quote-unquote liberal progressive media, which has held court for the last 8 years. This is the status quo. So conservatism, libertarianism, to some extent anarchism, these are the alternative fronts now. It's strange, I know, to think in those terms, but we've gone through a pole shift, and most people don't realize this. So it's really more punk rock to be conservative. It's really more punk rock to be libertarian than it is to say being open and free and nothing. Open and free, and when I say that in a kind of a classical, liberal, progressive, or maybe non-classical, modern, liberal, progressive mindset. It's interesting. I wrote about this about 2 years ago, how the new radicalism, the new revolutionary spirit has nothing to do with the left. Nothing. I was watching Alex Jones. He's got this new guy on there, Owen Schroyer, and he got his debut. I'm pretty convinced that Owen Schroyer is probably CIA, by the way, because he just showed up on the scene one day. Yeah, he just doesn't show up, right? I mean, you get on there and you've got some serious chops. The thing I love about Owen Schroyer, CIA or not, is when he goes in and he really drills down and just keeps asking questions and questions and questions. And what he does, and what he's done in a very short period of time, is he's exposed people on the liberal and progressive front to be absolute and utter morons. And I hate to say this, and I've got some very bright liberal and progressive friends. Don't get me wrong. There are some people that run in those circles that are extremely intelligent. But what happens is that they are afflicted by their bias. Now, you would say that everybody's afflicted by their bias. To some extent we are. But there's a polemic that's involved with being on the left and being a liberal and being a progressive that makes it almost impossible to have an open form of discourse and dialogue because quite frankly, what I've seen is they will revert very, very quickly to some form of ad hominem attack or something that takes them off of a line of questioning or a line of reasoning, and the next thing you know, you're dealing with somebody that doesn't want to deal with you, or they're dealing with you in ways that are completely off the topic of conversation. They're not even on point. It's embarrassing to watch some of these people because they come in with these broad, generalized ideas and statements, and then once the truth is applied, then they have a very difficult time defending their position, and in most cases look quite foolish. And I'm sure you can find people on the right who will do exactly the same thing. It's on both sides. To be fair, it's on both sides. But when we get into these squares, Saturn, Sagittarius, Neptune, Pisces, remember it exists at the very least in 3 levels. Level 1, it's the enforcement of laws, strictures, and rules by which we can truthfully share. Saturn, remember, is a vice grip, is a clamp. And when it hits a planet in a chart, it does its clamp-like fashion and clamps down on it, and then basically puts pressure on the relationship with that planet so that essence of the planet in the chart is released. Follow me? That's what it technically does. So in a sign, Saturn is compressing Sagittarius. It is compressing the nature and the order of the law. Speaking of which, oh man, they always do this shit. I think it was Friday night. It was late Friday night that a judge in San Diego, California, Devin, Sagwa, he's part Asian, part Japanese. He ruled against the people of California who wanted to maintain their religious and philosophical exemptions for their kids getting vaccine. This is really kind of amazing. You know, the power was put into his hands to rule on this one topic. It's one very important topic and subject, and he ruled against it, and he ruled against people that had filed a suit against the state of California, which now says you have to mandate your child. It's a mandate to vaccinate your children, or you can't go to school. It's either homeschool or the shots. And the news for this came out on a Friday night. How about that? These people are so predictable. It did come out on a Monday. And then what happens on Friday night? On Friday night, you know, this is coming up. And then the next thing you know, Colin Kaepernick is not standing for the national anthem. I'll talk more about Colin Kaepernick from an astrological perspective. I'll talk about that. But again, let's just get into that vice lock, that vice grip, Saturn on Sagittarius. Coming in, squeezing it. People will only be able to take the squeezing for so long. In fact, they're having a hard time right now. People are getting squeezed all over the place. And people are getting really uptight and close to breaking. Have you felt it? All the pressure that's being applied in our daily lives, from a collective place, from an individual place, people are really starting to buckle under the pressure. People are getting more ill-tempered. They have less patience. They are looking to essentially debate versus listen. The level of subjectivity and taking things personal is getting greater and greater in our lives. So we're really getting tightly wound up. That's Saturn. That's another element of Saturn. So let's go back again. Saturn and Sagittarius, the square to Neptune, exists on 3 levels. Well, 4 if you just count Saturn. But square to Neptune is the obfuscation of truth. That's one square to Neptune. Another square to Neptune is the weather issue, squaring off, dealing with things like droughts and an abundance of weather, Neptune, Pisces. And then the third level is the individual level in finding our own truth. So we have the inner, the outer, and then we have the macro, the cosmic. And that is what's happening on the truth front, on the weather front. And it's happening. It is really, just look at what's coming out. When we talk about WikiLeaks, right? WikiLeaks, leaking is a term that we associate with pipes. Whether it's, pipes or lines in your car for your fuel line, for your oil, or inside of your house, things leak. And inside of those leaks is something that's viscous. It is fluid. So what are we talking about? We're talking about WikiLeaks, Neptune, Pisces, Chiron, Pisces, and it's going to come in larger and larger waves here in September, which brings us back to this false flag piece. Now, will it be a weather false flag? I don't know. It could be, because they could be cooking up something significant off the Gulf of Mexico. I mean, we could actually see a massive superstorm over the course of the next week, because the way that the cells are sitting now and not moving due to the broken Gulf Stream, we're in a very intense place, powerful place. But it doesn't have to necessarily be limited to weather. You know, we've got this Mercury retrograde, which I guess I should segue into, because Mercury retrograde is in the sign of Virgo. It's at the 29th degree, the anaretic degree. It goes retrograde on my sun sign. It's going to be interesting. I have no idea where that's going to take me. Boy, fingers crossed. But I've been talking about this for a while, and we are on the verge of major economic news and developments. If you look at what's happening in places where they have luxury real estate, you know, we're talking Florida, we're talking the Hamptons, these places are not selling. You know, or if they're selling far below their market value. So when you see that the 1% or the 0.5% are having a hard time offloading their property, if there's a crisis, a real estate crisis within the 0.5% or the 1%, we are headed into new territory. Because think about this. When we had the last bubble that burst, 2008, right? It's when we get into that sea change between one regime and another. This is when all hell breaks loose. We didn't get it last year. Why? Everybody was talking about, oh yeah, well, it's the blood moon. The blood moon. No, we weren't going to get it last year. It's going to come this year. This is the Jubilee. Last year was the Jubilee for external purposes, but this is the Jubilee coming up. This is the how it would have looked. The banker's holiday. The bankers are absolved of their banking sins. So we have major developments with the 0.5% and the 1%. Because in 2008, when we had our crash, it affected the middle class, wiped out a lot of money, wiped out a lot of liquidity, a lot of asseture. I know people that lost their homes. Their homes are underwater. There's another Piscean term, right? Underwater. Our homes are underwater. The absolute next collapse will involve the 1%. I'm telling you. Because the 1% are not part of the plan. No. In essence, the plan is to wipe out most of the 1%. Now, let's define what 1% is. I have heard that 1% is $250,000 a year and above. So if you're making $250,000, you have a red bullseye on your shirt. I was watching an interview with this young woman. What an idiot. Oh, my God. Look, I'm sure there are really good young people that are going to college right now, so I don't want to pass judgment on a whole wave of people. But if this girl is indicative of what is being taught at a collegiate level, if this is what passes for social awareness, and I'm embarrassed. Because she was on with Neil Cavuto, and they're having this international million student march where students are all going to walk out college campuses. It's coming up. It's around the country. The million student march, and their list of demands includes, number one, all student debt be forgiven. Okay. Number 2, free college, free tuition moving forward. And number 3, a $15 an hour minimum wage standard. And I listened to that, and and she was very adamant about this. I was dumbfounded. And Neil Cavuto just kept asking her questions. Who's going to pay for it? She's like, well, the 1%. The 1%. This country's rigged. Or, there are things in this country. Blah, 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 blah. And Neil Cavuto just said, well, where are you going to get the money from? So let's play the game. Says the 1%, let's say the 1% is taxed close to 50%. It kind of is. Of course, you can find ways to hide your money and stuff. But he said if the 1% had 100% tax on their income, that they would only be able to carry Medicare for 3 years. Think about that. Think about that. That's just one program. And this dingbat had no idea. I mean, she just did not do the math. All she had was that rich, frothy polemic that they serve up like a latte in college campuses across the country. And this is why the 1% is in trouble. Now, I'm not speaking ill of the 1%. I'm not. Because a lot of the 1% are people make $250,000, lawyers, doctors, people that have small businesses. They've got bullseyes on their shirts, on their chests. These are not the top 60 earners on the planet. No, those people will never have bullseyes on their chest, although they may psychically, but they won't. And so what do we have now? This is just like the French Revolution. We're getting close to that phase cycle where the populace turns on the people who have built the structures and create the small business capital in this country. They are marked. They are marked. So let's say they're wiped out, which is possible. It could be possible that they will be wiped out. Then who profits from it? It's the top 60 earners on the planet and the people that serve them, and maybe a few small outer rings, maybe the top 1,000 or 2,000 people on the planet. That's who it serves. Because what happens to that money? It's got to go somewhere, right? It just doesn't disappear in a void. It gets sucked up, and they get it. And just like in the French Revolution, where the people that were the threats, the so-called bourgeoisie, who were threats to the real ruling class and the real elite at that time, i.e. the Rothschilds, they were taken out. And we're seeing that happen now. We're seeing these pieces get put into place. When a young, dumb, and unthinking young woman going to college just starts spewing this rhetoric without really even considering it. And what's happening? That brings us to September in Mercury Retrograde. One of the things that, I would feel comfortable sharing is that with Mercury Retrograde, we'll get information about jobs that is contrary to what we've been led to believe. Right, that unemployment is at what, 8%, 9%? No, probably more like 20%, 22%. They usually land on a master number, 22%. And those unemployment numbers are going to trigger the banks. Wall Street, we know, is being traded by algorithms. They've separated themselves out in some ways from this human element. Because when there would be bad news economically, you would see these shock waves run through the stock market. They've sort of isolated that now. And there can be real-time buying and selling without a lot of Sturm and Drang by people wanting to get out of the marketplace. So they can move it in any direction they want. But my sense is that the numbers will be fairly overwhelming. And as a result, there'll be a chain reaction. And we'll start to see more layoffs in the next few weeks. And those layoffs will come from service-oriented positions. Because when we talk about service, we talk about Virgo, right? Now, Mercury retrograde can also be theoretically positive if it's in the right direction. Let's apply that to the vaccine issue, since we've been talking about it. What if Mercury retrograde in Virgo was an energy that allowed people to go back and look at vaccines and look at their efficacy and find out that they aren't as efficacious as we've hoped and prayed they would be? And what if, in actuality, the Mercury retrograde leads to some greater clarity in health around the whole vaccination piece? The other thing we've got going on now, I don't know if you're following it, is the Zika virus. Obama was talking about the Zika virus. They've been very clever about the Zika virus. Now, they tried to get people inoculated with H1N1. People would not do it. Why? They wouldn't do it because the rate of transmission, whether it was the bird flu or the swine flu, was found to be very small. So people weighed the advantages and the disadvantages of getting a shot. And the people that did get shots got sick. H1N1, they got sick. But the way that the Zika virus has been created is fascinating. Shows up in Brazil. The Brazilians have even said the mosquito has nothing to do with it. Nothing. And it has to do with Monsanto and crap that Monsanto's leached into the water supply. Now, apparently, Zika, or whatever this malady is communicable. It is contagious. I don't know how it is, if it's just the kind of the fluvial runoff of Monsanto's chem fertilizers in Brazil, but apparently it's communicable. So what they've been doing now is they've been dropping Zika mosquitoes, or apparently they've got outbreaks of Zika in Miami, Florida. Whatever that is, it may not even be this version of Zika, but now they've dropped these genetically modified mosquitoes into Miami to fight the Zika mosquitoes, and this is just not going to end well. It's just not. Now you got these mosquitoes running around, and who knows how their genetic modifications have been ordered and sequenced. You don't know. You don't know if they slipped in a back door or some other virus. I mean, this is, so now we've got Zika lurking. And why am I talking about it? Because we're dealing with Virgo. We're dealing with issues around health. So Mercury retrograde gets us thinking about past plagues, right? Gets us thinking about H1N1, the avian flu, the swine flu, the Spanish flu, which is a huge killer. Spanish flu may make a reemergence here with this Mercury retrograde, if not in actuality, certainly in terms of discussion. So I'm hoping that with Mercury retrograde, the whole notion of vaccines is revisited and that their efficacy is called into question. But remember, they've got plenty of things lined up, plenty of things to take our eyes off the ball, including but not solely relegated to Zika. But there's chatter. Obama's talking about it. Get ready to have a plan, because if they make it mandatory for you to get a Zika vaccine, If you go to work, they won't let you go to work. Perhaps. I'm just throwing this out there. I'm not fear-mongering. This is how these things work. What about school? Oh, your kid's not allowed to go to school unless he gets the Zika vaccine. Think about that. Think about that. Now, if you live in a state, I wouldn't waste any time. I would find out who is running. Like in Texas, we've got a group in Texas that is dealing with vaccines. And in Texas, we pushed back. Unlike California, they were trying to run the mandatory vax last year. Some a-hole down in San Antonio, a jerk off. And we pushed back, and we beat them back. We kept our philosophical exemption. But it is not solely the domain of the vaccines or the scheduled vaccines. So we're going to have to deal. I have a feeling we're going to have to deal with the Zika thing sooner rather than later. Nobody's got a plan. Nobody. Obama could declare a state of emergency. He's already talking about it. He's talking about it today. What are you going to do? What are you going to do if they mandate that your child get the Zika vaccine or the Zika virus vaccine before he goes to school? And they're sitting there at school with needles, whole team. You know what happens to the kids? What's in that vaccine? How are they going to affect them? We don't know. You know what was really fascinating? I was at Vax. I talked about this on Friday's show. I was there in Zero Virgo. And Del Bigtree, if you've not seen Vax, you've got to see Vaxxed. You must see it. It's on Amazon. They are thinking about outlawing it in California. That should tell you something. Del Bigtree basically said that they tested Viagra for 10 years. 10 years. Do you know how long they tested the HPV virus for? I think it might have been about 5 days. So these vaccines are not going through strong, long-term clinical trials. The CDC will, first of all, you can't trust the CDC. You just can't. They've already proven that they're whores for the pharmaceutical industry, big pharma. And I'm telling you this from an astrological perspective because we're dealing with Mercury retrograde in Virgo. You know, we're dealing with the potential of contagion with Neptune and Pisces, and the squaring off and the oppositions. You know, the mutable T-squares coming up. So, again, you know, I'm just trying. I'm not being a fear monger. I'm just telling you what I see here, because we have to revisit certain scenarios, certain situations as they relate to health, as they relate to healing, at that anaretic degree. 29 degrees. This is where Mercury retrograde is starting. It's like we're just about ready to kick into that Mercury and Libra and just bond with people, right? Bond. We're going to talk. We're going to relate. We're going to harmonize. It's like the glass wall. And then we have to go back and retreat and realize that there's work to do, that we have work to do. Now, for a lot of people, now I want you to hold this up as a mirror, okay? This is a good one. Relationships. You're going to see people over the course of the next week who are ramping up in a relationship or in a relationship, and they're going to retreat. And the mantra will be, I'm sorry, I can't do this. I have work to do on myself. I've got to figure this out. Why? Because Virgo is represented by the number 9, ninth month. Astrologically, it is the hermit. It is the hermit. So it's a retreat into the hermitage. That's what Mercury retrograde 29 degrees Virgo is. About ready to join the other through the mind and communication, and you got to go back. Sorry, got to get better at this. Got to work on this. Got to clear this up. Got to get healthier physically. Got to get healthier emotionally. Now, Mercury goes direct on the 22nd. It's weird, man. This Mercury retrograde is weird. It goes retrograde on the 29th, which is the degree of my sun. And it goes direct on the 22nd, which is my birthday. Very weird. And this Mercury retrograde could be a real vortex for me. Yes, he's knocking on wood. But you're going to hear this. You're going to hear this from people. Sorry, I've got to work on myself. I need space. I need to get clear. In some cases, that may be true, by the way. It may not be unreal. It could be true. The other thing with Mercury retrograde Virgo, and I think this is really where it's at, is that I think it's a time where we need to take stock. We need to look at what we have on hand. I mean, if we are about to enter a state of emergency, and all I've been hearing for the last month is state of emergency chatter. If we are about to enter into a state of emergency, you better damn well be prepared. You better be ready. So this Mercury retrograde Virgo would be a good time for you to start that checklist. How much water do you have on hand? How much food do you have on hand? How many feminine napkins do you have on hand? Toilet paper, how's that? These are all very Virgoan concerns. Do you have fuel? Do you have a generator? Do you have a bug-out bag? Cigarettes, alcohol, bullets, I mean, whatever, wherever your trip is, right? Mercury retrograde Virgo gets you to think about those things. Now, it starts off at 29 degrees. The Sabian symbol is a man reads a man scrolls through an ancient text and is illumined from within. That's basically the Sabian symbol. It's an interesting one. I live with it. That's what I do. I read the ancient text and I'm illumined from within. Speaking of ancient text, you got to listen to Friday's show with Steve Creamy. Great show. Katabatic Wind author Steve Creamy. There's a guy that goes into the ancient texts. So what does it mean for us metaphysically? From that 29-degree Sabian symbol, the man, reads an ancient scroll and is illuminated from within. It means that with this Mercury retrograde, we need to look backwards. We need to go back into places of history, historical context, meaning, understanding cycles, understanding players and how the players are just people that have been updated. They're updated programs. This is important. There's a lot that we can learn from the past. A tremendous amount. You know what's really interesting is there are about 4 different strains of history going on simultaneously. Maybe 5 that I can just rip off the top of my head. Okay, you want to know what they are? Okay. So if you're following what's happening with the Lakota and the BLM and what's happening with the water rights and the pipeline, that's cowboys and Indians. So that is the Wild West. We got a Wild West standoff happening it's Idaho, isn't it? Idaho, Montana. We've got a Wild West standoff happening there. So that's one sort of band of historical correspondence. Between ISIS and the West, we have the Crusades. It's another band of historical context. We have the reignition of the Cold War, i.e. the late 50s, early 60s with the Soviet Union, or the former Soviet Union, now incarnated as Russia. We have the fomentation of the 60s themselves, not the Cold War 60s, that's 50s, late 50s, early 60s. We also have what's happening on campuses across America. We have civil rights, black power. And that's another kind of tier of what's happening simultaneously. So we've got the Wild West, we have the Crusades, we have the Cold War, and we have the socially active and demonstrative times of the 1960s, the radical pièce de résistance launched by Bill Ayers and Barack Obama. So we've got 5 concurrent bands of reality or history that are being played out simultaneously. I could probably tap into maybe 1 or 2 more if I wanted to. But those are the ones that are really prevalent. And so when we get into these times, we get into these moments where our past is colliding with our present in such a visceral way, what it says to me is that we're recycling these last threads of history. You know, when Michael Stipe wrote that song, "It's the End of the World as We Know It, and I Feel Fine," I really felt like Michael had tapped into something. That the world had ended. And he was just ripping through everything. You know, it was this fast forward of a rewind. You know, high speed rewind. And it's kind of where we are now. And I remember listening to something, you know, things feel different. Michael Stipe's right. The world has ended. At least that world has ended. We've moved on to something. Now it's prescient, 1980s. That would have been post harmonic, convergence. And I don't think Michael Stipe was talking or singing about the harmonic convergence. Just post that. So here we are. It's all present. We're cycling through history, which means that we're probably almost out of time, or the end of time. Our elections will never be the same. They will never be the same. The Democratic Party will never be the same. You know, people have felt completely and utterly disenfranchised, demoralized. The Republican Party is interesting because it's been reinvigorated. Isn't that fascinating? The Republican Party has been reinvigorated by a grassroots movement. Now, the Democrats could have had that too, you see. But because of the power brokers inside the Democratic Party, they weren't going to allow that to happen. They weren't. And the Republican Party barely allowed that to happen. I mean, there were a lot of roadblocks thrown in Donald Trump's way, but he pushed on and suffered the slings and arrows of abuse from the likes of Ted Cruz and John Kasich and everybody else that wanted to derail the Trump Express. How about Trump and Nigel Farage down in Mississippi? That was something. How about Trump in Mississippi? I'm sorry, Louisiana. Well, Farage and Trump were in Mississippi. But how about Trump in Louisiana? I don't think he was grandstanding. The guy brought tons of stuff. You see, when you get into astrology, you cannot, and I mean this now, you cannot parse the chart. The chart is the chart. There can be some wiggle room in terms of interpretation based on maybe where a person has been in their life, but the chart is the chart. So when I look at Trump and I see Venus in Cancer, I see Mercury in Cancer, and I see Saturn in Cancer, as an astrologer, I'm trained to look at Cancer. I'm not an oncologist, but I'm an astrologer. I'm trained to look at Cancer. What does it mean? It means that if a person has, X amount of planets in Cancer, that they're going to be nurturing, they're going to be caring. They may be hard, especially if they have Saturn in Cancer. But this is what they're known for. And these attributes, unless they are compromised in the chart, are real. How can we selectively say, well, this Cancer in this person is more real than, say, this Cancer in this person? How can we say that? And I know really good astrologers, And some of them cannot stand Donald Trump. They think he's a liar, he's this, he's that. But how can you be completely orthodox with a chart and interpret it one way for a person versus interpret it another way for another person, because maybe that person fits the ideological or semi-historical proof? We have to be careful when we get into this stuff because, yeah, it can be subjective, but there are rules. There are certain rules you follow. If you see the sign of Cancer, you don't interpret it as being Aries. You just don't. And if you do, you should be doing something else. Now, you can say it's cardinal and has cardinal energy, but it is only activated under specific circumstances. And those circumstances are clearly delineated and lined out. When there is a need to care, to provide, to nurture, to feed, to grow, to protect, that is when the cardinality of Cancer is activated. So when it comes to the 4. So when we saw Trump in Louisiana, what was he doing? He was there to nurture, care, feed, protect. Boom. Cancer, Venus, Mercury, Saturn, 11th house. Got down there with a truck, started handing stuff out. Where was Obama? Playing golf. My God. Where is Hillary Clinton? Partying with Cher. Partying with Cher. Sorry, I just went off on a little bit of a tangent there, but I'm trying to give you some understanding about astrology. It is not selective. Oh, this counts for this person, but it doesn't really count for this person. Yeah, because you know who they are. It just invalidates everything. Look, Hillary Clinton's got Jupiter in Sagittarius in her first house. I actually honor that. I look at that Jupiter in Sagittarius on her ascendant, and I say, yeah, she's lucky as hell. That's Jupiter in Sagittarius. Lucky as hell. And there are times when I look at Hillary Clinton, and she's actually, in a weird way, I don't really like her, but in a weird way, she's kind of likable. She can be funny. She has that kind of, at least publicly. She's got the Jupiter and Sagittarian kind of joviality, right? Behind the scenes, all that stuff in the 12th house in Scorpio, forget it. There's darkness there. But I honor that Jupiter. Now, theoretically, that should be, very much in alignment with, hey, I'm not going to judge you. I'm not going to judge you. We're going to be free. We want to be expansive to be free, but it's not. Now she does have a lot of interactions and dealings with people from foreign countries. Hello, Jupiter and Sagittarius. She's made a lot of money off of them. Hello, Jupiter and Sagittarius. Again, we're being true to the chart. Does she move around the world like she has absolute impunity? She does. Hello, Jupiter, Sagittarius on the ascendant. I will expand. I will be a global persona, and my personality will be unassailable or untouchable. And I will have complete and utter faith in my ability to create conditions around me to expand and conform to my identity, Jupiter, Sagittarius, 1 degree. I honor that. There are parts of that person with Jupiter and Sagittarius that can actually be kind of redeemable, but it's been compromised. There are other parts of her chart that have been compromised. That Jupiter and Sagittarius theoretically should stand for liberty for everyone, but she's living out of her 12th house. She's living where that black moon Lilith and that sun and that Mercury are behind the scenes, doing deals. But sometimes those deals are very dark, especially when we get into the Clinton death list. I haven't even gotten into where we are planetarily. Why don't we spend some time doing that? Yeah, Sun 6 degrees. Virgo tomorrow. It's on my Pluto. I've got Sun on my Pluto tomorrow. That should be interesting. I think I'll do my show tomorrow. I'll do my first show. The first 15 minutes of flame. We'll do it tomorrow, Monday. Listen up for that. Sun-Pluto conjunction. It's a good day to start it. Pre-Mercury retrograde. Moon is in Cancer, 27. We're moving into Moon Leo tomorrow. Wear your emotions on your sleeves, boys and girls, with Moon and Leo. Coming up on a new moon here very soon, which means that we're getting into eclipse territory, aren't we? Yes, indeed we are. We're getting into lunar eclipse territory, and we're getting into solar eclipse. The solar eclipse is on the 1st of September. How about that? So one day after Mercury retrograde, we are going into solar eclipseville. And this is from Bustle, the website Bustle. This is from about a day or so ago. And we're going to look at where the solar eclipse is going to be taking place. There you go. Come on, Internet, do your thing. This brings us to two options for watching the annual solar eclipse in 2016. One option is to place yourself in this year's lucky eclipse viewing area, namely Madagascar. In other parts of Central Africa, not great for Central Africa. For some people in the region, the sun-moon eclipse lineup will be straight above them, leading to a perfectly visible eclipse, the ring of fire effect, for which annular solar eclipses are known. Other inhabitants of this region are far enough afield that they'll only be able to partially see the eclipse. That includes the rest of Africa, Southern Asia, Western Australia, and Antarctica, plus the Atlantic and Indian Ocean. So we're going to have a solar eclipse over Western Australia and part of Antarctica. So it's not quite in the ring of fire. But I like the fact that it's over Antarctica, since we've had such a buzz with Antarctica lately. So we've got an eclipse coming up on the 1st. We've got Mercury retrograde happening on the 31st. Hang on to your hats. I think we're in false flag territory, and I think we're looking at either this week or the following week. Following week, we're dealing with 9-9. 9-9. 2016 is a 9 year. So we have 9, 9, 9. Flip that 9 for 2016. Flip that 9 for September. Flip that 9 for Friday. That's 666. False flag, Friday the 9th. 9-9, 2016. Maybe it comes down the 8th. Now remember with eclipses, they're about 2 weeks, 3 weeks out from when they occur, or about 3 weeks before, a couple of weeks before. One of my students, Rocky down in Louisiana, noted that we had this major deluge with the water pre-eclipse. He may be onto something with that, but we're in the field. The annular field of the solar eclipse. I was born on a solar eclipse. I was born on a solar eclipse. Interesting. Happens. And I'm okay with it. My life has seemed to have been a life that has been solar eclipse-like in a lot of ways. So we've got the solar eclipse that's on the 1st, and we've got 9-9. 2016 or 9, that's coming up. What else? Mercury-Venus conjunction. Boy, I tell you, this would be a good day to really, tomorrow is going to be a great day to communicate. Look, if you want to communicate to somebody in a relationship and communicate in a way that can be clear and concise, but at the same time, sort of, intuitive and, balance. Tomorrow is an amazing day. Don't sleep on any important communications that need to take place tomorrow, because we're headed into Mercury retrograde the following day. In fact, we're getting into that station territory on the 30th. So tomorrow, take some time. Tomorrow is a variation of 9/11, by the way. We have 9/29, 2 plus 9/11. Put that in your chillum and smoke it. Don't sit on the energy. Get into it. Communicate to people that you really need to clear the air with in that Virgoan, kind of way. Because the thing about Virgo is that it can be so, how do I say this? Detail-oriented, painstakingly detail-oriented, and to the point of critical that it can be painful. Then you're just going through your mind. And it's just mind talk. But I'm telling you, tomorrow with the Mercury-Venus conjunction so close, get into it. Allow it to kind of percolate. Oh, look at Jupiter. Jupiter's right in there too. Conjunction. Hello? Expanding through communication, connection, intimacy, clarity, roles and goals through Virgo. Make it happen. There's Mars, 12 Sag. I'm going to miss Mars being out of my first house. If I come back here again, I want to have Mars in my first house. I've liked it. It's at 12. It's past Saturn, so we got that past that Saturn, Mars, Antares. But I'll tell you what it brought up. It brought up this stuff with Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump and Alex Jones. And I'm going to talk about that. This thing with Hillary Clinton and Alex Jones, significant astrologically, and I'll tell you why. You have to wait though. You don't have to wait too long. Mars and Sag again. It's at 12 degrees, so it's not going to be in a big heavy square with Mercury or Venus or Jupiter. They're going to kind of operate, on their own accord in a lot of ways. It's in a square with the sun. Tomorrow, later in the day, actually tomorrow night, Moon moves into Leo, so it won't be in trine with Mars. The Moon will be in trine with Mars on Tuesday. So a Moon-Mars trine. That would be good. Passion. Only sharing the truth. Jupiter Virgo getting ready to move into Libra. That's how I believe on the first. I've got Jupiter 2 degrees off my sun. Something good is going to happen then. I just know it. I feel it. Then it's on. Then it moves on. I'm going to miss Jupiter. I'll miss Jupiter and Virgo. But it's going to conjunct my Libra planets. Moon, Mercury, Venus. So I'll be happy about that. Saturn 9. Finally moving forward in Sagittarius. It's off that conjunction. And we're going to be looking at Saturn. And I started off. This is what I want to do. Because Saturn is in Gemini at 15 degrees when 9/11 went down. And Saturn has that final pass at 15 degrees on, oh boy, how about that? Whoa! How about that? It has its final pass in the opposition towards 9/11 Saturn on election night. It actually starts the night before election night at 15/1, but on election night it's at 15/8. Just for kicks, let's just find out what the exact time was here in the. Do I have my 9/11 chart? I don't think I do. Let's just go back to 9/11. Hold on. It should be 2000. I don't have to do anything. Let's do this. And 2001. Okay, so on September 11th, I don't want to be here. I don't want to be here. I want to be here.
whispered all the time. You know why? Because we'd have to lean into people, and we'd have to talk, and people would have to really listen hard, and our voices wouldn't be so loud. Maybe we should have one day where we just whisper. National Whisper Day. Could you imagine telling somebody off while you're whispering, "Hey, you motherfucker, I hate your fucking guns. I want to kick your ass." "Oh, yeah. Well, I hate your ass, too." "Oh, yeah, yeah."
Where's that going to get people? Huh? Not far. So let's go back to September 2001. All right, September 9th. Oh, it's at 14 degrees. It's going to peak a little bit earlier, like about a day or two before Election Day. Okay, so that day, Saturn is at 1440. So let's now move forward in time. I've always wanted to time travel. When I was a kid, I had fantasies about time travel. I used to lead kids in my school. Not many people know about this. But I used to take kids in my school. I used to lead them into this sort of time traveling vortex and other dimensions. And we had imaginary people we'd fight, imaginary ray guns, and I would take kids into all these different realities. That's what I did when I was like 7, 8 years old. And I had a cardboard box. I get a cardboard box. Now, this was not my original idea. I have to share this with you. But I tweaked it, so it was my thing. There was a guy that lived down the street, and he had a cardboard box, and who knows where he got the idea from. But he turned it into a tank. And I think he had like a roll of what you call it, like a paper towel roll they put in the box. And he had things to the eyes, and he had a little, went around. It was his tank. Well, I decided to do that, but I created a time machine. And so my box, I had all my little switches and stuff on the inside. I get in there, and I'd flip my switches, and I'd spin around. And I'd spin, and I'd spin, and I'd spin. I'd get really dizzy. When I get so dizzy I couldn't do it anymore, I'd pop the box off the top of my head. And I'd be someplace in time, right? And so as an only child, I had to entertain myself somehow. All right, so 1440. I'm sharing with you details about my life. Imagine that, 1440. Okay, so Saturn. Here we go. November 1440. That's going to be on the 4/11. 4/11. How about that? So the return of Saturn to its position on 9/11 will take place on 4/11, which is a Friday. Circle that date. We all know they like to do things on Fridays. Good news cycles. Okay, where else are we? Here we go. Saturn, we did Uranus 24, Aries, retrograde. Okay, so here's what I want to talk about. This thing between Hillary Clinton and Alex Jones. What we have with Hillary Clinton and Alex Jones is a classic square between Pluto and Uranus. Alex Jones represents Uranus and Aries. The voice of the people, the vox populi. He's male, right? He's intense. He's aggro. Uranus, it's the internet. It's mass. It's alternative mass media. Alex Jones is Uranus and Aries, and Alex Jones theoretically is an Aquarius. Uranus is the ruler of Aquarius. Am I right? Am I right? Am I right? I am right. Okay. Hillary Clinton, Pluto in Capricorn. She is part of the plutocracy. She represents the system. She represents the system that governs us, Saturn. Capricorn is what? It is a feminine sign. Now, it is the most masculine of the feminine signs, but it's a feminine sign. All Earth is feminine. You can't parse it. It is very masculine in its intent to, to achieve. It's the opposite of Cancer, and I don't care. Cancer is feminine in its kind of desire to create, nurture. And feminine doesn't necessarily have to be female, right? I've got Mars in Cancer, 0 degrees. I've got a very feminine side to me. Like, I care. In fact, there was a woman who did my oral reading in Sedona. She said I was the most compassionate, loving man, one of the most compassionate, loving men on the planet. How about that? How about that for an evolved feminine side? You see, so feminine is an energy. It does not have to be sex specific. So I can say it. Cancer is feminine. There are Cancerian men who are feminine. There are Cancer women who are very feminine. Now, conversely, Capricorn is an earth sign. It is still feminine, but it is a masculinization of the feminine principle, which is earth. It is about ascent. We judge Capricorn by what? Verticality. Started off with, basically capitals, right? So if you look at the ascent of architecture, the largest building at one point in time was the church. You go into a town, the church was the biggest building. What happened after that is that the church was supplanted height-wise by the next highest building, which was the Capitol building, often a rotunda or a dome. That was then supplanted by what? The skyscraper, which became the most theoretically important building based on its hierarchy. So we can see, where we are now. We are in Capricorn lands, right? So it's all about ascent. It's all about verticality. Cancer is not about that. That said, what is the ruling? Pluto is the ruling planet of what sign? If you said Scorpio at home, give yourself 50 points. What sign is Hillary Clinton? She's a Scorpio. So we have Pluto, Capricorn, Hillary Clinton, Uranus, Aries, Alex Jones. There we go. The manifestation of the two colliding and hitting off. I've never seen anything like this. Now, it could all be theater. It could all just be one big fucking play. Oh, sorry, I'm not supposed to use the word. It's the first time I've said it tonight, by the way. It could all just be one, just one big, shambola. But it's not, I don't think. If it is, it's highly entertaining. I mean, I've never seen a candidate go after somebody like Alex Jones before. It's weirdly legit. Alex Jones is, man, that guy's expanding. Now, I've read I haven't read this on the Friday show, but I should. I'll do this sometime this week. It's a very interesting article about a guy who's an insider with the Illuminati, whether you believe in the Illuminati or not. He's an insider, and he spills the beans on a number of different topics and people and structures, both physical and otherwise, in the world, and he claims that Alex Jones is not to be trusted, and that he's got a role in the New World Order. Think about that. Think about Alex Jones becoming some kind of minister of truth for the New World Order. And what if the New World Order isn't Hillary Clinton? What if the New World Order isn't Barack Obama? What if the New World Order is represented by Alex Jones? And the acolytes of truth and freedom. Isn't that interesting? Wouldn't that be a game changer? Wouldn't that be fascinating? All these people who are fighting against the New World Order, theoretically, really are the New World Order. I'm going to say it here, that's a mind fuck if you think about it. So here we are, anti-New World Order. But the people that we're backing are really a part of it. And so what comes out of it is something that we accept quite easily. It's like, yeah, we defeated the evil forces. We defeated the evil forces of globalism. We pushed back. And we won. The spirit of liberty beating in my chest. Every single day. I bet you didn't know that I'm really the New World Order. It could very well be. I'm just throwing it out there because I got to play a little. Look, you can't get too set in our ways sometimes. And we got to reality test every now and then. It's important. It's very important. What did Yeats say? The best I call conviction, while the worst are filled with passion and intensity. No, the worst are filled with passion and intensity, while the best I call conviction. Put that in your pipe and smoke it. Speaking of pipe and smoking it and conviction, how about Colin Kaepernick? Decided he was going to sit down while the national anthem was being played. Loved it. Poor boy's deluded. I like the fact that he stood up for something, or rather sat down for something. Wasn't that ironic? He didn't stand up for anything, right? He sat down. He's going to be the Rosa Parks of Gatorade coolers. We have Uranus, Aries, Neptune, Pisces, 10 degrees. We got into that. Pluto, Capricorn. I've just been ranting and rapping. I'm sorry. And we've got, 28 minutes left in the show? It's been blown by. Absolutely blown by. All right, why don't I do this? I want to talk about Stranger Things. And I want to see if I can squeeze in a few readings here. Let's see if anybody's waiting online. Oh, yeah, there's a couple of people waiting there. Hang in there. We'll get there. I might not even do a break tonight. I think I'm just going to go all the way through. Did I open up the chat room? Dang. I didn't open up the chat room. I was so focused on tonight. I'm sorry. It's a little bit late now, but I'm opening up the chat room. And if people want to get in the chat room, I apologize. Normally there's a little bit of a conversation going on there. It's going to be empty, I'm sure. Hi, I've opened up the chat room. I've just been so intense and focused on what's going on in my head. How about that? I want to talk about Stranger Things. And I've put off on watching it. It's like, should I watch it? Should I watch it? Should I watch it? Of course, I'm kind of late to it. I was late to Mad Men. Everybody's watching it. I hate that. I want to be the first there. So I'm watching Stranger Things, and there's so many astrological components to Stranger Things. And then there's more. There's more. So what I want to do is I just want to do kind of a quick overview. If you don't know the series, it's an 8-part series, 8-episode series. It is on Netflix. Stars Winona Ryder. She's probably the most well-known actress, besides, Matthew Modine is in there. Probably not as well known as Winona Ryder, but he's in there. And he plays a German named doctor with the last name of Brenner. So what they're doing is, so the whole thing here is a boy goes missing in Indiana. This is during the 1980s. His mother, played by Winona Ryder, basically is losing her mind trying to find her son. Meanwhile, a young girl shows up looking completely freaked out, looking like she just stepped out of Auschwitz, and has very short hair, giving her a very current kind of androgyne look. And she has some kind of secret power, right? Special power. And she winds up hooking up with these 3 boys who are misfits. And the 4th boy, who is a part of their little posse, is the boy that's gone missing, Winona Ryder's son. So we begin to have these series of interconnected relationships. And there's a sheriff who's lost his daughter. You don't find out how he lost her until later on. I don't want to talk about it. It's important. It's an important part of the show. But he's going through a long-standing relationship with grief, unresolved grief. So we've got the stage set for unwinding this tale. And it takes place in Indiana, and there's a research facility there where they are doing experiments, very dark experiments. And the girl that they found, or they find, or the boys find, is part of the experiments. And they basically, through the show, talk about MK Ultra and how there are these experiments that take place. Now, MK Ultra was started by the Germans. Operation Paperclip, come out of Nazi Germany. They're flown out, and they create this program, MK Ultra, for a number of different purposes and reasons, both personally and collectively, traumatization of the individual and the collective. And that is signified by Matthew Modine's character, whose last name is Brenner, which I believe is German. So there's a hint there that this guy is German. This is what he's doing, what he's been doing. So you've got all these, the stage is set, and what they've done, and I'm not going to, you're going to figure this out if you watch this within the first couple of episodes, is that they've discovered that there is a parallel dimension that is below, theoretically below, and they use the analogy of it being below our dimension. And the girl that they have tweaked through their MK Ultra modification is the one that creates the portal between our world and that world. And there is a creature that is in that world called the Gorgoron. And I don't want to say too much more about it, but essentially it is a dark, shadowy realm that is creepy. And it is a simulacra of our reality, but beneath the surface of it, theoretically. It's not really beneath the crust of the earth, but it's beneath the surface of our reality. Now, keep this in mind, because I'm going to talk about another /movie/show, Midnight Special. I want to make a quick parallel between the two. So, astrologically, let's get into this now. I don't even know who did the film. Somebody called the Duffer Brothers, who were I'm thinking it might be the Wachowskis. Let me just look at this, because I just finished the show yesterday. The Duffer, maybe it's not the Wachowskis. Who are they? Okay, they're not. Matt Duffer and Ross Duffer. They're born in 1984, and they're the creators of Stranger Things. The brothers directed the film in 2012. Let's see, what did they do? They did Hidden. What else? Where are they from? They're from Durham, North Carolina. So they did Hidden in 2015, and then Stranger Things. The Duffer Brothers. Interesting. Okay, so in the movie, how Winona Ryder, how the character, by the way, her name is 11. 11. So when you deal with 11, what are you dealing with? You're dealing with duality. Duality. When are the Duffer Brothers born? I just want to say this. Of course, I'm into astrology, so Matt Duffer doesn't say when he was born. I'd like to find out though. See full bio. Let's see what we got. So 11 represents duality, or like the Twin Towers, what we're talking about. So she is a person who connects one world and another world, two separate worlds. Her name is 11, and there are 3 boys who befriend her, and they call her L for short. L is Saturn. So she becomes a living manifestation of Saturn in the movie. She is the L. She is supposedly the daughter of Matthew Modine, although That said, there's no clear example. He calls her my child, my daughter, my girl, all these sorts of words that convey that she belongs to him. But she has no history other than what we know of in the film, in what she does in order to break the film, or in order to be broken down and then have her enormous powers of telekinesis. One of the things that she does, or how they get her to open this doorway between our world and their world, is through water. I'm not going to say anymore. It's through water. It is Neptunian. So what we have here is a manifestation of Neptune, as above, so below. In this world and the world beneath us, Neptune Pisces. Okay? Neptune Pisces. Now, what's also interesting about the movie is that, and this has nothing to do with the astrological components, but Winona Ryder, who was born on the 29th of what month? November. So November is what? 11. The 29th is what? 2 plus 9, 11. So we have 11, 11, and we have a character named what? 11. Is it a coincidence? Winona Ryder, her godfather is Timothy Leary. Her father, Michael Horowitz, that's her real last name, is Horowitz. Michael Horowitz is the executor of all of Leary's papers and books, his letters. It's Michael Horowitz. I met him one night. Strange night, San Francisco, hanging out with my friend Chris Van Buren. And we were at a diner. One of those drive-in diners, I forget the name of it now. Anyway, we were at this diner, and it was me and him, and Michael Horowitz was there, and what's his name? Gordon Gund, the guy who owned the San Jose Sharks, was there. And I knew Gordon. Chris knew Michael. And we're all there at like 4 in the morning, 3:30 in the morning. It was weird. It's a weird time. Anyway, he was there. And Winona Ryder was very much involved with the disappearance of Polly Klaus. And I'm not going to get into that too much. I'm going to write about this. So you'll be able, this all just came to me today because after I saw Stranger Things, it started to pour in. But Winona Ryder felt very close to Polly Klaus, who disappeared in Santa Rosa back in 1996, I believe, 1995, 96. And her father, Mark Klaus, started the Polly Klaus Foundation. They eventually found Polly, but it wasn't Polly that they found. What happened to Polly Klaus is an absolute nightmare, shared with me by a private investigator. I'm not going to talk about it now, but I will write about it. So you have Winona Ryder, who is at the fringe of MK Ultra, because Timothy Leary was part of the collective operation of MK Ultra, and essentially kind of, wiping the minds clean of a generation with LSD and LSD ideology. That was his role. And so his goddaughter now is connected to that. She's connected to through this movie and perhaps a number of other things. She comes into the movie and she plays the mother of the son that's missing. She's a Scorpio, right? Actually, 11/29. No, she's Sagittarius. My bad. What's interesting here, and I'm about to make a few connections to another movie called Midnight Special, which was out just recently. There's a group of these 3 boys that are in Stranger Things. And one of the boys, his name is Lucas. He's African American. His name is Lucas. Ironically enough, the first movie that Winona Ryder was in is called Lucas. And the character that played Lucas is Corey Haim. Corey Haim was one of these, poor young men in Hollywood that was ritually abused. Now, was he part of an MK Ultra experiment deal? I don't know, but there's the occult side of this. So he's in that movie. Charlie Sheen is in that movie, Winona Ryder's first movie, and Winona Ryder, of course, is in it. Lucas, so we have her first movie, Lucas. Lucas, the character in Stranger Things. And if we go and zoom out a little bit and get into Midnight Special, it is a parallel of Stranger Things. In Midnight Special, it is a boy who is being sought after by the military and the NSA. In Stranger Things, it is a girl. In Midnight Special, it is a boy that breaks out of a institution, which in this case is a doomsday cult. In Stranger Things, it's a girl that breaks out of a military facility, but they're both breaking out. They're both being sought after, right? The boy in Midnight Special has supernatural powers. His name is Alton. Alton. And in Midnight Special, his understanding of the nature of reality is that there is a world that exists above ours. So you put the two together, and you have Stranger Things and Midnight Special, and you have the duality coming together. So we have Gemini, right, coming into, a holon. So we have the girl with supernatural abilities, we have the boy with supernatural abilities. She's the one that opens a dimension and a portal to the world beneath ours. He's the one that brings down a world that is above ours. So as above, so below. And these are both children, right? Masculine, feminine, male, female. And what's interesting is that in Midnight Special, there is a character named Lucas. So we have Lucas showing up in both movies. One is black, one is white. One is young, one is old. And of course, we know what Lucas means. Lucas means what? The light bearer. The light bearer, the messenger of the light. And shows up in both movies. We'll take it one step further, although this is just a bit of a reach. But if you go to Indianapolis, they have a stadium there called the Lucas Center, which is Lucas Field, which is, based on Lucas Oil. So the name Lucas plays a prominent role in 3 areas or 4 areas, if you include Indianapolis, of this movie or these movies. Lucas in the 2 films, Winona Ryder's first movie, Lucas, and Lucas Field in Indianapolis, movie filmed in Indiana. It doesn't take place in Indianapolis, though. So the 2 films almost are alchemical components of the same sort of whole. It's really fascinating, and I highly suggest that you view both. Now, from the Midnight Special perspective, you're dealing with the Neptunian realm of religion, right? Piscean realm of religion, because you're dealing with end days, apocalypse, the doomsday cult. So you're dealing with Pisces in that realm. And you're dealing also Piscean, if you put the 2 together, right, the totality of Pisces, which is the sacred and the profane. Because in Midnight Special, when he talks about a world above ours, and I'm going to tell you it appears. It appears. I'm going to kind of blow it a little bit here. But it appears, and it is, let's just say, it's not like ours. And it is certainly not like the world that appears underneath in Stranger Things. The two have to be seen together, or at least experienced as a whole and part of a kind of Gnostic representation of a certain version of reality. And both El and Alton are considered weapons. They are youth that is weaponized, but maybe perhaps it's an allegory for the millennials. I don't know. But one could make a case for it. All right, we got about 9 minutes left here. I'm sorry, we kind of on the rant stage tonight. Let's see, what do we got here? Oh, this just came in. Now, this is weird. It says active shooter, police deployed, mass evacuation at LAX. And then there is another red headline. This is from RT. I want to thank Jacqueline for sending this in. LA authorities say no significant incident at LAX after shooting scare. Social media posts from Los Angeles International Airport are describing shots fired and police rushing to the scene, while footage shows people apparently being evacuated. Multiple calls are coming from terminals 1, 5, and 7. That's interesting. 1, 5, and 7. Let's add them up. We got 13. LAPD says there are people possibly barricaded in bathrooms in Terminal 6. Culver City 311 reported. Federal Aviation has issued a ground stop at the airport until 10 p.m. local time. It says here, LA County scanner, LAX active shooter moving his way around the terminal. Another report said the shooting took place in a food area inside Terminal 8, that people are barricading themselves. But then it says here, LA authorities said no significant... Well, this is weird. This is really weird. I'm going to play a little video here just to see what's happening. Hold on. This is all fresh. Right? This is hot off the... People are being pulled off their planes. We also had a power outage in Dallas at the airport today. So this is what happens when scream shooter. 9/11 shots, shots heard downstairs at Terminal 6. Callers barricaded in the restroom. Let's play another piece of video here. Let's see what we have. No, that's not going to play. So then it says here, LAPD reports no shooter victims found. Appears to be a hoax that fucked a lot of people up. Children crying, way to go, a-holes. So, very strange. It says here, this guy says, before things got really crazy, a man in a Zorro costume with a plastic sword was arrested. Let's do this. All right, so here's video of a guy in a Zorro costume being arrested. Oh, my God. I guess if you're going to the airport, don't wear your Zorro costume. So this is before everything happened. We live in a bizarre world. Thank you, Jacqueline, for sending that. Strange. Strange, strange, strange. We've only got about 6 minutes left. I apologize. The show's gotten away from me tonight. I've been rapping a lot. Duffer Brothers first called this series Montauk. Heal Me Now. Sorry for the late opening of the chat room. Hey, listen, I got some good things going on the website. The Everything reading is off the hook. It is off the hook if you are listening to this broadcast. I gave a big discount earlier in the week. 2 weeks ago, I gave a 25% discount. That discount's over. I'm going to give another discount, 10%. That's $25 off the Everything reading. And the Everything reading is a 2-hour reading. I combine the natal chart. I combine the draconic chart. I look at your numbers. I look at your major arcana. I look at the Zolkeen from the dream spell. I look at your Chinese animal and I put it all together. And the reading, the draconic or the soul reading in relation to the natal reading is, trust me, worth the price of admission. But you get the other stuff too. So if you're interested in the everything reading, go to my website or email me, rpm1122 at zoho.com. Tell me you heard this, and you get 10% off. It's $25 off that reading. 2 hours, in-depth, powerful stuff. I have to say, it's been a real, I've been doing these for the last week, and I've been wanting to take what I'm doing to another level, and I'm telling you, bringing all these things together has been really something, I got to say. All right, well, why don't we get on out of here? So, again, I apologize for taking such a long time and to get around to stuff. There's so much to talk about. You know the deal. You know the drill. Use your head to discern what's your heart said when it's possible. I'm Robert Phoenix, and get ready for 15 minutes of flame coming at you starting tomorrow. I'm just going to go for it. Pluto on my sun. It's going to happen. Wear your flame retardant suits when you listen to it. Have a great week. Here's Philip K. Dick.
We are living in a computer-programmed reality, and the only clue we have to it is when some variable is changed and some alteration in our reality occurs. We would have the overwhelming impression that we were reliving the present, déjà vu, perhaps in precisely the same way, hearing the same words, saying the same words. I submit that these impressions are valid and significant, and I will even say this: such an impression is a clue that at some past time point a variable was changed, reprogrammed as it were, and that because of this an alternative world branched off.